Welcome to CGT Square Talk, where top experts in the industry share their groundbreaking journeys. Brought to you by Blue Squared, your strategic digital partner.
All right, thanks for watching part one of Cyrus's podcast with us, and here's part two.
Welcome back, everyone.
From a leadership and collaboration standpoint, ideally we're working towards supporting every individual to be the best in sort of the band of their personality, so to speak, and whatever wings and arrows that they have access to, so that it's highly functioning organization. Because those average states are going to start to go away. On the other hand, by the way, if you look at unhealthy states, the unhealthy types are all going to look like each other also. How? They're going to be sort of in panic states, haphazard, not listening, just ignoring each other, you see. They're going to show up very similar also. So.
Yeah.
So if I hear it correctly, leaders, I don't want to say should, but leaders would probably want to look at this from a perspective of what's your strong suits, and then kind of develop the other side of your personality to kind of make you a high functioning individual, right? So that would probably be the job.
What you're bringing in is important, because there are other models like Strength Finders, which says, just leverage people's strengths. That's your best bet. If they're not good at something, why even bother? So I don't come from that school of development. I come from a path of what's called integral coaching, and the Enneagram as a developmental model believes in the sort of the full aliveness of every person, the full potentiality, right? It comes from, in fact, what's called the human potential movement that goes back, decades and even much more than that. But yeah, I think, and to your point, Armin, and also Anthony, in the short term, if there are things that, sometimes I'll catch myself saying this. Do we have any sevens that we can do some really fun brainstorming with? You see, I sort of went to my average state of thinking, because both sevens are so damn good at at brainstorming. But
Hear that, Ray? Get ready.
Right. Go ahead.
No, I said, hear that, Ray? Get ready, because she's a seven.
Right.
So there's
Cyrus, I have a question for you. This model, or any other, I'd say, development model, I see how it can be applied to an individual very easily, even to a small team, to a startup. How do you go into a 200 plus project where there's a myriad of differences between the people and apply such a framework successfully?
Well,
especially things like resolving conflicts. Go ahead.
Can I put a spin on that? Because I think what I've noticed in this conversation, and into what you're saying, Victor, there's managing it internally, right? So we could have everybody at Blue Squared take the Enneagram test. We could be very thoughtful about it, help people develop, and that's in our control, because that's our company and we can do that. I think what Victor's also, what you're getting at, is what happens when, we're providing service to another company, or, and this could go for anybody, right? This could be one of our clients working with one of their vendors. How do you navigate that when you don't have control of helping people develop? Right, Victor? That's kind of where you were.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you're also not going to have a guide of the personalities that are on that particular project like you would with an internal team.
Yeah. So it's a big question, and I won't come to it from a solution, because that's not my expertise. How I would come at it from a collective emotional intelligence, collective way of understanding and collaborating, would be that, first of all, at the individual level, focusing on our own growth and development, right, and getting to the healthier states, most likely will help all of our communication, conflict management, potentially, right, at home and at work. So again, there's the me focus, I think, is really where it starts. If everyone does their work, just imagine, there wouldn't be any conflict in the world. So that's probably the biggest path to global peace that we'll ever have, is if everyone does their inner work. Now, the we part is, naturally there will be conflict, you see. naturally there will be differences in worldview and differences in approaches. And beyond the Enneagram, there's ways of working with this. I mean, there's inclusive of the Enneagram, which is understanding how personality plays a role, pausing, listening with curiosity. And then there's the work of like Marshall Rosenberg, Nonviolent Communication, which is a seminal book that a lot of organizations refer to, where the key tenets of managing conflict go back to a kind of a sort of more vulnerable way of being, which is to state what I'm observing, what I'm feeling in the state of conflict, what my own values and needs are, and what requests I'm making, you see. So what happens is when we start to bring in the me in a deeply courageously honest way, like when you say this, when your organization does this, here's how my team is impacted by this, and here's how I'm individually impacted. I'm concerned. I get frustrated. I'm saddened. Whatever that is. You see, by naming the emotion, we go beyond the cognitive ego to ego sort of like clash that could happen to, oh wow, this person actually went there. They actually went to their feelings, you see. And already a softening often starts to emerge from that approach. And from that, when we're truthful about our experience, and then also name that, what I would love is for us to really slow down and just take a moment to understand what's happening. And I want to do the same for you, let's say, and your organization. And so from that, and it's not such a linear thing, right? So ideally, the other person or the other group has a way of approaching conflict in a similar manner, taking emotional responsibility for what they're experiencing, being curious and open to hear about what you have to say. But even if they're not, you see, even if they don't have those tools or resources, when we do our part, in this kind of authentic, sincere, heartfelt way, there's a melting that usually already happens. You see, that conflict has a chance. If we don't, and if it's just an ego clash, there's no hope. You see?
Right.
So one side at least has to start that process. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious to see. So, Lan, you came out as a 3, a 1, and a 6, the achiever, the reformer, and the loyalist. Does that, like when you're working with teams, whether it's ours or externally, how do you interact with like other types? And I'm kind of curious on how you manage some of the frustrations you run into.
Right. Yeah, I think something about the type 3, I think probably have a tendency to do things at the same time. I think I have some natures of causiness as well. So that is the type. It's the type not showing up in the 316. I think sometimes I getting thinking a little bit too much. So that is the other things. So as a 3, I have I probably have a tendency kind of more. Sometimes become a little bit impatient. So uh, and but I was along to knowing those things. I was try to basically just try to control myself and explain more. But there's one thing. This time is the first time I know about this test. So
Mhm.
I think by aware about this, I think it's important to know that what I see myself is not the same as the others see myself, see me. So I think that is a very important thing. And at the same time, I learned from the mistake. Sometimes I jump too fast, or by want to do things as a type 3 probably, and I kind of try to slow down a little bit.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah,
Ian, what do you think about that? Because you guys work a lot together, and I
Yeah,
think
it's interesting. I mean,
he does go do stuff really quick.
very fast, and I try and balance my thoughts of like wait, slow down, let's figure this out, let's understand it, to like let him go, let you go or let somebody else go because they're going and they're doing good stuff, and we can address it later. And sometimes makes me speed up, right? Makes me go, okay, let's get to a decision quicker. So I don't have any specifics other than I just try and balance those two things in myself too.
That actually made me think of a question for Cyrus. What if you put different personalities together? Do they tend to usually draw from each other? Just what Ian just said, right? Like I'm looking at somebody and they're in a go mode, and I want to stop and think, but sometimes I want to say no, let them do the thing, right? And then speed up yourself, for example, right? So is that common where you put multiple personalities together and they start drawing from each other and not naturally to their personality?
Mhm. Yeah, it depends. I mean, in some cases, they might draw towards each other. There might be a mirroring. So, for example, we talked about a tendency of a 3-7-8 to be more naturally assertive, and they might feed off of each other. And then sometimes the energy of the 5 and the 4 and the 9 is considered maybe a little more withdrawn. It has to do a lot with being more introspective and thoughtful and understanding and that sort of thing. And then what can also happen is, of course, some clash in that, right? Some clash in like, what is wrong with this person? Why are they going too fast? Or like, can they just ever speed it up? You see? So that's where the conflict usually arises. And some types do rub each other more the wrong way, you see. So for example, and it's interesting because those types might be where our growth edge is. Like the 8, when has an arrow towards the 2, and I'm going to briefly give the 8 as an example. So the 2 is far more heart-centered, and naturally often empathetic, kind, observant to emotions and the needs of others. And so the 8 might more naturally in an average state see that as so weak and like, come on, just put up a fight, will you? So that might be in the average state an orientation. Well, it turns out the growth, the development arrow of the 8 is often the 2-ness, the high side, the high functioning part of the 2 that is naturally very compassionate, right, giving and caring. And so if I can bring my 8-ness of leadership, of assertion, of making big things happen, and my compassionate side, my inclusive side, my other focus, what a beautiful thing, you see. So now we're starting to talk about the and, right? And not the either or thinking that starts to get more of an egoic tendency, right? When we start to bring the and we bring in the other arrows or other types to help us, more well-rounded, now we're talking. Now we're developing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ian and Victor, you guys haven't really talked too much about your types and how you interact, but I find Ian to be a good balance for me. Ian, you're like a peacemaker, a loyalist, and an investigator. All very interesting. And what triggers you?
Well, disharmony, like
the
right
audio.
now, this thing not working, my audio and video is very upsetting for me.
Yeah, I do have a question for Cyrus. And in your experience, did you ever see a case like a person have two dominate type, but they are kind of contradict to each other? Did you see a very strong two core type, but they are two totally different one? Just wondering where do you see that type of case? Yeah.
I'll say a couple of things. Yeah, thanks for that question. One is that the underlying pattern in all the Enneagram circles I'm aware of is thought to never change. So the motivating sort of underlying pattern of that, what's called the core type, doesn't change. But a lot of other things do change that makes you, your external behavior start to feel a little different. And that's when we do take on aspects of other types. And then when we're in the more highly functioning state, as I talked about earlier, often these arrows do feel like opposites. I talked about the 8 and the 2, or the 3 and the 9 you know, the 9 in a more average state is going to be a little bit more like, you know, what's the deal? Just like enjoy life, you see. and the 3 is just like go, 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 you see. But when we merge the two, sort of the gifts of both of those types, the natural ability to get results, which is a 3 orientation, and then in the 9ness, it's more of the inclusion and the consensus, including everyone in that. Now it's not just some narcissistic thing for my own glory in my own 3ness. Now it's actually hopefully bettering the world, you see. It's including and in fact, there's the 6 orientation, the loyalty to others, and the high side of the 6 is also a development arrow for the 3, for example. So I think, yeah, so I think what may seem like an opposite, in fact, what rubs us the most about any one particular type is very likely a development edge for us, an area that we want to explore. Why is it that type that really bugs me and bothers me? Because in psychology, that might be what we call the shadow. It's an area that you sort of disowned about yourself, maybe for good reason, not to let your inner critic have its way with you. It might be a good reason why you try to avoid that type. Might be reminding you of a parental figure or someone in your childhood or someone in your life that you just don't get along with, that you start to ignore. But usually there's something in it that we can learn from for ourselves.
Interesting. Why don't we talk a little bit about the shit show of the week? So, why don't stories would be interesting, I think. To you guys, why don't we do each one of us, like, what did we deal with this week or last week, and how do you, knowing what you've heard today, you know, how did you initially react to it, and what would you do maybe differently? And then Cyrus, maybe you can give some EQ tips on how we could have done better. Who wants to go first? Where are the entrepreneurs?
I'll go last. I'm volunteering to go last.
I can go first.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, shit show of the week for me. Trying to figure out, for example, how to switch a major for my kid in the university, right? At the university. And that was a lot of conversations. It's not related to work at all whatsoever, right? So, but
well, that's useful.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a lot of different things I can talk about work, but I actually don't want to. So I think I wanted to kind of switch it to the personal as opposed to talking about the business. But yeah, so initially, natural 8 was no, you have to do it now. You have to get all these done now, without thinking about, you know, different possibilities and different, you know, different avenues and everything else. And I was pushing. And then what happened was that my son, which I tend to believe that he's probably a natural 9, was like kind of trying to calm me down and trying to say, hold on, you know, let me figure this out and everything else. And at the end of the day, the opportunity presented itself to have 3 different paths to where we need to get to, right? As opposed to I was trying to.
Hey, when he's trying to calm you down, does that trigger you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I know more, right? Because, you know, like, how can you calm down an 8? What are you talking about? I've already been there. I'm trying to get to the finish line, right? So, but yes, naturally. And you know, it actually helped me understand, and I literally backed off, which before I probably wouldn't, when after we had this conversation about taking the actual test and understanding it, that helped me a lot. So I was like, you know what? I actually looked at it from a different perspective and said, you know what? Hold on a second. Let the kid do what he needs to do. And I backed off, and it actually worked. But we still completed it in 1 week, but you know, which I was driving it towards, but we completed it on his terms, which was, for me, that was a big change. where before it was like, no, it's my way or the highway. So my shit show of the week.
That's beautiful, Armin. I mean, it's an example of really slowing down, appreciating, trying something different than how you might normally approach that, and you got the results, right?
Yep.
So it's not that you didn't get it. So there's something in your energy, and then inviting more of his as well, your son's. That in that blend, some goodness happened. So thank you for sharing that.
My situation is quite similar, but it's not the shit show of the week. It's the shit show of every day with my 7-year-old daughter, who has a very, very strong character. And I was struggling with how do I play a good mentor and coach role for her, but not overdo it, to not break her character, so that she does grow to be a strong person that does have a voice. And striking that balance for me is a challenge at the moment. Plus, of course, I love her, I adore her, I'm her daddy, so then I can't really be too strict also. But yeah, it's striking the balance in relationships that's difficult sometimes.
So what did you do?
Escape the situation and let mommy deal with it. Like the easiest way out.
Wait, is there an escapist on here? I don't see that, Cyrus.
No, I was managed to negotiate the deal, but yeah, still, that was my situation of the week.
Yeah, I mean, parenting is fertile ground for working with our personalities. I mean, because we have so much riding, right, on our loved ones, our kids, and we see things about ourselves in them and things that we want to see. And this could be a whole other show on parenting, and I'm not, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on it, other than, bringing in aspects of listening, observing, understanding, and like what's mine in this is a natural theme. I mean, this is, for me, with the struggles I've had actually recently with one of my daughters, the learning always was, okay, so I have something I want to say, a few things I want to say, and can I let go of the results? Can I honor that this is her precious life? Not like, whatever, just leave her. No, because that's impossible as a loving parent. But can I genuinely say my piece and then genuinely, sincerely trust that whoever else is in her life and whatever else happens is happening just for her, the way she's going to navigate it. I'm not saying I always succeed in this. I've failed a lot this year in that.
Can we apply the same principle to clients? It's like, we're going to say what we're going to say, and then the rest is yours. Whatever problems come.
Yeah.
Very interesting, though, to be able to apply this to clients. You made me think about that. So
yeah, I think, well, and it's not just client. I think anybody interacting with other people or other organizations have this situation. I'll go next, and then Lan and Ian, and then of course Ray, you're going to go last. So I've kind of had two situations. I think they're work related. So I think one is definitely having some conflict with styles internal at between organizations that are trying to deliver some value to their business, right? And I think before we had our conversation on the Enneagram, I too, being an 8, would be a lot more forceful in trying to push through. Look, guys, we need to hit this goal, and you need to just kind of fall in line and do it. I think what I did or was able to kind of do is take a step back and say, okay. And something that you said actually the other day about asking, it disappoints me that we're not able to kind of hit this goal, or that we're not able to kind of all get on the same page. The way that you frame the I think you called it putting your feeling out there, or right, when you're talking about this. I was able to take a beat similar to what Armin was talking about, and I think that helped the situation. On the flip side of that, we were having more of an internal conversation yesterday. And my frustration definitely rose, but I didn't take the beat. It just kind of continued to get to have that frustration, right? It's like, come on, guys, we need, and the pressure was different, right? There's different pressures that are operating there, and I didn't kind of step back and do the same thing.
Right. Yeah, pressure testing is key. There's some triggers that may be a little bit harder to process. But what you did, the previous example, in developmental coaching, we point to the low-hanging fruit. Start there. Don't go to the panic state where, you're going to try to go from one way of being to another, because it's just not going to happen. But like the ones that feel more reachable, doable, over time through repeated practice, something like starts to fire up. Actually, there's new neural pathways that develop. There's a neuroscience behind it too. Because it feels so awkward to do that. That's not my person. That's not who I am. Well, that's not who you take yourself to be, but there's a lot of light at the end of that tunnel. So if we keep practicing, something happens. Even the more triggering ones over time start to feel more accessible. Yeah.
Ian or Lan, which one do you guys want to?
Yeah, I can go. So yeah, I think it's learning these things. I think it's good to make like a self-aware, and then be more more understand how others react as well. So I think that's one of the things is that sometimes I see things I say or put it in somewhere is not communicated well. Maybe it's due to the fact that I do things type of a way and go too quick and not communicate enough. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I try to slow down and then try to push more conversation right to others. I think that is the good things I learned. Yeah.
Lan, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I think I've told certainly Ian and others, because we've worked together now for like 15 or 16 years. So I would always say, look, if Lan tells you it's going to take 2 weeks, you've got to add at least another 2 weeks for anybody else who's kind of operating normally, because he's always going to be faster than everybody else. So you're going to have to add some time into whatever he tells you.
I appreciate that, Lan.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was that got me into trouble many times too. So
I think it's a good trait to have, but I can see how other people might not agree.
No, it's phenomenal. Actually, it's just that, I think, so when we deal with our development team, right? So Lan, I think they're probably a little bit slower than how you would perform if you were doing it. And I think, how do you deal with that? Do you get frustrated with them because of that?
yeah, it's like especially let's take this project as an example. Some of it are getting a point that I think I tell myself, okay, I just do it myself. So I'm doing myself, so of course it is way faster. But the problem is that the next time they're still making the same type of mistake, they make at the same type of gap. So that is the things I think I was learning the lesson. Even though I do it and then I tell them, okay, just follow it. If once something get done, and it's difficult to convince people to kind of okay, go back and learn from it. So yeah, so those are the things I think I need to learn my lessons.
So sometimes people get used to it too, and they go, well, don't worry about it, Len will fix it, or he will do it, right? And then they'll continue to kind of push that back. So
I was going to just say, Armin, beautiful. That's the risk that we take when we're constantly the doer. There are times absolutely that it's going to make sense, and you're going to be very much appreciated, I imagine, Lan. And longer term, at what expense to your health, by the way, your own well-being, as well as what does it do to others. So in the 3 state, what I learned over the years, continue to learn, is what Russ Hudson, who teaches the Enneagram beautifully, often says: how might I be the participant of what's happening, and not always just the results oriented, the one that's going to do. So that's a development edge sometimes in our 3-ness.
Lan, can I? Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you because I kind of know the situation, of course. So you're kind of talking about with the team, and I know we brought in another resource to kind of help augment the fact that maybe the speed isn't working, or it's not working exactly like you wanted it to. Did that frustrate you that we brought in or that the solution was to bring in, an extra resource to kind of help, mitigate the risk that you saw, or you didn't care?
Yeah, I think bringing in a dedicated resources and like charge this guy or make this person accountable for this for validation and as a gatekeeper. I think that is a one way to address this issue. Like people like
But did it
people
frustrate you that we
oversight.
had to do that? Would you have, you know what I mean?
That it is, but that is the things I learned. Try to accepting other people's capability. I think so. To me, I thought that if I think that is probably this the type 3 type of nature. When you do things, you follow through on the surrounding area and expect everybody do the same, but it is not not always like happen like that for others. So that is the one of the lesson I was continuously learning. It is that may not be the may not everybody are thinking about the same way. So
Eon, it's your turn. Is your video working?
I don't know.
I saw a smile. Oh, it is.
it's
Okay,
working.
we'll see what happens.
San
I guess we
Francisco
could talk
caught
about-
up.
Hello?
San Francisco caught up.
Yeah. So something that's come up for me, is so we go to conferences, meet people, and I reached out to a couple people that I met at the conference, both to understand their industry better and also to potentially, sell something to them. And they don't, sometimes they respond or they don't respond. And I also feel awkward about like being too invasive about someone's time and space, emailing. And then, so they came up, someone responded and then they didn't respond. And then I think a long time about, should I respond? When should I respond? How should I respond? Am I being disingenuous? Like, am I being too like, oh, I just want to sell to you? But also I really am like genuinely like curious about what they do. So I can get a little caught there, and I guess this happened this week, and I try and just email or text and then let it go and move on. But it can be a little bit hard to have like, I guess what, maybe an 8 or a 3 would have, just like forward motion, just push. All right, go on to the next, whatever you can do. Like I think it's a little, yeah. So that's what came up for me. I don't know if it's quite a shit show, but it's
So you're talking about what's the frustrating part, the thinking about it a lot and how you should deal with it, or just the fact that?
Well, the frustrating part for me is when people don't respond.
Well, there's that, but that's out of our control.
Yeah, but my response to it, I guess, is in my control, right? So a response about what that means, maybe, or if how much I should push or not push. It can kind of, it can be a little bit, if I stick in that space too long, it could be an energy drain.
Right.
So
So you're
So you
overthinking,
scored really
overanalyzing.
Yeah. You scored really high on the 9, and then you
Yeah, so
tied with the loyalist and the investigator, like 27 at the peacemaker and 19 for both of the other two.
So you were investigating the entire time.
Or the 6
No, I
maybe
mean-
got in there and it's like, oh my God,
it's
help
also
us,
like
Cyrus, help us.
this sort of like harmony thing, right? This sort of
And Armin's up there saying, fuck harmony.
Yeah, so let's get it done.
yeah, and that's kind of where I was coming from too. I was like, let's just come on, let's move this industry forward. Let's like we all have to talk to each other and figure out the problems. You know, that's like genuinely what I think.
Can't we all just talk?
Can't we all just talk?
Well, like, there might be, first of all, an honoring of and appreciating of, okay, if I'm trying a little too hard, that might rub someone the wrong way. And so maybe there's a genuine kindness in that, a consideration in that example you used earlier, Ian. And there's an and. If something in your gut and your body's saying, this is like, I'm getting a little frustrated or impatient. So there's something else happening in that. Okay, that was good, but is there something I can say or do or take, show my agency so that that other part of me doesn't feel like unseen and not expressed? Because that's in our 9ness, that can cause like a buildup of frustration, right? And resentment potentially too. So little by little, a developmental path for the 9 energy is actually the healthier 3 arrow. You see, the 3 that does get results and starts to assert themselves, or the wing of a 9, which could be the 8 or the 1, right? Which is the 8 in particular is a more assertive tendency. And I would say earlier too, to go with the more low-hanging fruit, the ones that don't feel so high in conflict or potential of going sideways. To assert yourself in areas that feel like not so, woo, Otherwise, like I said, in development, there's what we call the comfort zone. Not much growth is happening. The outer rim is the panic zone. If we go there, we disappoint ourselves and we decide not to develop at all. But then right in between is the growth zone, the development zone. That's where we want to go, right? Little by little to spaces, areas that aren't so comfortable, but we know there's some juice there.
I had a writing teacher that said something similar. He's like, all that emotional stuff, the really hard stuff you feel it at a 10. Don't write about that. Write the stuff that you feel at a 7, because the 10 is just so charged you won't be able to think clearly. But the 7, it's that edge, right, where you can actually work with it, and it's a little scary. But so I think your point is something similar, where it's like, how do you stay at that scary edge that you can still push yourself through?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And last but not least,
It's my turn. Luckily, I don't have any work examples to give.
Thank God.
Yeah, I think that I mostly work with Anthony, and I'm similar enough to him that I don't feel like we stress each other out too much. Hopefully that goes for you too. But because one of my mottos is, if it costs me my peace, it's too expensive. So I definitely appreciate the fact that I don't tend to feel very stressed out in this job. But I'm going to give like the most 7 example ever. And it also highlights my other top numbers, I think, is, so I became obsessed with roller skating about 6 months ago. And I'm like so obsessed with it. I roller skate almost every day, and I like have to be good. It's like, I can't just, I tried to tell myself, I'm just going to enjoy this. I'm just going to learn at my own pace. Like, no, of course I'm not going to do that. I have to be like, but anyway, the main point besides being good at it is obviously to have fun. Like, we're literally rolling around on 8 wheels. There's nothing serious about this. You couldn't have a more like, fun loving and sort of, I don't know the best word for it, but just, it's like, how could you be mad if you're roller skating? So I've been going to the roller rinks quite often and realizing that some people don't have that same state of mind, and people have some, strange agendas to go roller skating with others that doesn't involve having fun. And so my response to like realizing that is the same as the other 7, Victor, is just, I'm going to remove myself from this situation and skate somewhere else, because the moment I see that somebody is not trying to look out for everybody else's peace and happiness and just enjoyment of life, my response is like, oh, I'm out of here. Like, I'm not dealing with this. So yeah, it's kind of funny reflecting on that now, because that's definitely in line with my Enneagram.
Yeah, I mean, you pointed to one of the gifts of the type 7, that just the innate joy and flow of whatever brings that in us, right? So if you're in a flow-like state, you're kind of in the zone, and you're doing it for its own sake, you see. Now, you're not trying to achieve something. You're not worried about what's going to go wrong, right? You're doing it for the sake, of what Alan Watts says. I think we talked about this last time. Well, what's the meaning of life? And he says, well, is to paraphrase, be alive, to be fully alive, and whatever, pursue that which actually makes you feel that way. That's the gift.
Yeah, anything that gets in the way of that, it seems like it's just so unnecessary. We're just trying to live your life, enjoy your life, do things that make you happy, and not get in the way of anyone else doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so funny. You make me think, because I have an 8, a 3, and a 7. And I have similar thing, right? Where, oh yeah, I really want to do this thing really well. And I got really excited, the whole 7 thing starts to come out. And then of course there's a learning curve. And then the 8 gets pissed off and says, come on, man, what the hell's taking you so long to get better at this? There's a whole inner conflict going on.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I like your approach better, where you can just have fun.
Having fun is definitely the top priority, but then, there's also the perfectionist part where you're like, okay, but I also want to be really good at it. Luckily, that's secondary. But yeah, I can relate to thinking, okay, I'm frustrated with myself because I need to be good at the thing I care about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've been at this quite a while. It's almost like an hour and 15 minutes, and it's been very insightful. And Cyrus, I want to thank you for spending some time with us, and maybe we'll have to do a part 2 or another one. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us and being here on this Friday. Victor, I know it's late for you, but thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Good session.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope everybody enjoys their weekend.
Yes, definitely.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
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 Subscribe for more insights from leading CGT experts.